All right. BLC versus Bros coming up. Putting on the last player for BLC. Hopefully, going to be a good cast. Not sure who BLC is going to get in for their last player. Whether it's a tryout or maybe one of their other players. Maybe we'll see Lion in here. Interested to see that. No maps chosen yet. Can't update OBS with that. Hopefully that comes in soon. And once these last players get in, we will start this scrim. Looks like we do have last player in. We may be starting soon. Looks like they're going to be choosing maps. Interested to see what they decide for first map. We are going to Arctic. Let me update that real quick. Um, okay, so there are viewers. Why can't I see the stream? Okay, apologies for that. I was struggling to find this stream on my side to send to the teams. However, in this first map so far, EMP has been planted, however. Ooh, the defuse is denied. Smoke is out. Great piece of utility there. 1v1, Chicago's gonna have to defuse. And they get it. EMP is defused. And I do not have this set up. Apologies, I was having technical difficulties finding my own stream. Very dominant beginning there for BLC. They were able to get... Okay, sorry. They were able to get into sight and get the EMP planted. However, they didn't get too many picks, and after trying to retreat, they lost a majority of their players, and that caused them to not be able to deny the EMP too effectively. Granted, they did get one pick before they lost the round. However, good round for both sides. Bros was able to come back with that EMP defuse. Very close. Almost saw it defused one time. That was denied, but then it was the second time. One player was playing outward in Green Hall, however they do decide to rotate back. Flicker taking space here in Gym. This could spell disaster for Bros. Nade goes out, doesn't quite catch any damage, also flashbang. However, no outward extension whatsoever. All of them are playing in sight. Interesting use of throwing a gun. Nade also goes out. David gets a 2K. Spike Jr. also gets one. EMP has been denied. Spike goes down. Now it's a 2v4. EMP is on the wall. They're forced to push this B site. Smart play coming out here, swinging out here in Gym. However, Ozzy still has to go for this EMP. There is also this roam coming in. Kazoo is able to get Chicago. David trades that out, and David swings out for the kills. Very good performance from several players there. Specifically, Spike Jr. here. He was able to deny the players trying to take space in sight. That was very crucial for them, because if the players were able to stay here, they would have been able to get relatively easy pick here on the player if they tried swinging out, and the player in Gym would have been able to cover this angle, and that would have been a basically free plant. Very good crossfires and counter aggression. Now we are onto bottom floor here. Do see hero drone coming in. That should be helpful. Nade also takes a little bit of damage off of Cream Baby. Hopefully they do notice these trip mines as well, along with the decoy. Ooh, Showtime with those trip mines. Drone doesn't quite catch it. Unfortunate pick there. They have taken space, however they did lose a player. Cream Baby is also 30 HP down, however they do trade that out. David goes down to a nade. EMP is tossed up. Hopefully they can get site control. However, playing a little bit slow here. Defense has gotten a lot of picks out very early. It is 3v3, even numbers coming out. However, We are seeing good cover there. EMP gets planted. Flicker has not taken any severe damage while getting plant down. However, as I say that, Spike Jr. gets the 2K. Now it's a 1v3 post plant, and they're pre-fired. That's going to be free defuse for Bros there. Great retake. Spike Jr. there being a real pain in the side. That 2K, and was it a 3K there? Was he the one that swung out? I'm not sure. Anyway, very good plays there from Bros. They were able to play very aggro on defense. You don't usually see that too much. However, it is relatively good to play aggro when you are in a retake situation. That instant did make it a little bit difficult in the beginning, however, once it was gone, they did take a lot of space. BLC also played very slow. After the player died to the trips in green, they kind of stopped their push for like 30 seconds. You generally don't want to do that. You want to make sure you take as much space as possible when you can, because otherwise you could fall behind, and on offense, it's very important to make sure you take as much space as possible, as quickly as possible, because you need as much time to take space in sight and around sight. Once again, Bro's playing very close to sight. No real roams. However, as I say this, two players swing up door. Uzi gets one of them. Door blocker is being shot out. Drone sees them though. Uzi gets the 2K there, swinging into sight. And goes down to David, sadly. However, the damage is done. It's a 1v4. EMP is gonna get planted. Flashbang goes out. And Flicker takes out David. Backside. Very aggro play coming out from BLC, and really worked out for them this time. Wow, that's something I didn't know. Uh-oh. Bro's just lost another player. That's 3v5. Ah, they have returned. Not quite sure what's happening. Hopefully they can get their 5th player back in time. Especially for round 5, right before the swap. And yes, we do actually see the other player coming back. However, Spike Jr. does go down. BLC is taking space here in red hallway. Maybe going to get the EMP planted soon. 2 foams is an interesting choice. You usually only see 1 foam coming out from teams and passing in between walls. However, I do think it is generally a good idea to buy 2 just in case. Flicker does throw a nade. That's going to take out Dreary. Good piece of utility there. Not such a great frag there. David swings out, gets taken out there. And now the defense is on the back foot. Showtime. In a 1v3 now. Chicago tries to deny that plant, however goes down. 3 HP now. 1 tap from any gun. His chances aren't looking too good so far, especially with this player very close here on the corner. And Uzi swings out, gets that kill. Very good plant there. They were able to get into sight relatively easily and cover that plant, especially with, I believe it was 2 players swinging up to deny that plant. Perhaps Bro should consider buying a little bit more utility on that site, maybe a grenade or an instant to throw on that plant spot to deny it instead of throwing players, especially since there's a lot of crossfires once both of those walls get blown like they did there. Does look like we may be seeing a little bit slower of a push here. They are letting drone go in. However, they will have to be careful for this util going out. Instant, not super far though. Interesting double static here. You don't usually see both statics in one place. Flashbangs going out, taking as much space as possible. They will have to be careful of this upstairs roam though. There is a player sitting on rappel here. This is a little bit less common angle, however it does let you hold the stairs roam. 2 players in B site. They do have to be careful for the player in red though. Showtime is able to get Cream Baby there back, but Flicker in red room is able to put a little bit of pressure on the defense. EMP is on the wall, however, they are forced to plant there. Ooh. David gets Uzi, however, is refragged. Now it's a 1v3. Showtime, once again, on his own. However, he has full HP. 1 dead. Now it's a 1v2 post-plant situation. He's going to need to retake site and take out the 2 players in order to get the defuse. Showtime takes a little bit of damage there. However, he might be out of ammo. Not really any point in saving, so he had to swing. However, after running out of bullets on that Vezin, there wasn't much he could do, especially since both of the players had rifles on the opposing team. A good try though. Definitely good to find as many resources as you can, especially with that oral and stim just sitting on the ground. And if he had swung a tiny bit sooner, he could have made a little bit more of a difference, but not much you can do when you're in high stress situations like that, especially multiple times in a row. We may perhaps be seeing a split push. And yes, we are seeing a somewhat split push. Looks like it will be generally all A site, however, very different approach to this. We have 2 players coming stairs. Looks like one might be going towards roof, and perhaps two on A door. However, Cream Baby is here to thwart this stairs push. Now they have a general idea on where they're going. However, they don't know that it's EMP player there. There is also a downstairs roam. They're going to have to be careful. Spike Jr. gets a pick. They're in sight now. However, EMP is still in museum. They do get that pick. Now, last two players are off site. This could be bad, especially since this could be bad for BLC. They decided to plant there. David on the EMP goes down. Cream Baby on a crossfire is able to get that pick. Now it's a 2v2. Everyone is low. I believe Kazoo Dude is the only one able to survive a body shot from a Spectral. Spike Jr. swings out for a pick, however, goes down. Green Baby is going to be forced to swing in, however, they don't check the corner and they're shot in the back. Good round win there from BLC. They were able to take advantage of two players off site and play very aggro off that hatch to take a lot of site control very quickly. And that allowed them to very easily get the EMP planted. That post plant was looking a little bit sketchy there, especially after the two BLC players were able to get picks. 2 picks. However, Spike Jr. in the back there was able to clutch it up for his team. Oh. Apologies, I don't know why that didn't swap. We're now going to top floor objective bros on the offense. We do see a little bit more of an outward extension. A little bit different from how bros played this site. 2 players in kitchen and 2 right by Green Hall. You usually don't see something quite this B-side aggressive. However, it is a B-side push, so it could work out in their favor. Bros being very wary of kitchen here, however, drone not actually heading that direction. It's checking Green Hall. Players have rotated off A door, however they are staying close to kitchen wall. It is very safe location, especially since there's 2 players in there right now. So, bros taking their time, getting the site blown. 1 minute already down the drain, and however they have taken a little bit of space. They do have most of Green Hall and Gym. Instant goes out. That's going to deny a swing up. However, ooh, David swings into sight, gets one. This may allow them to get EMP planted. EMP is on the wall. However, Uzi in the corner is able to get that pick. Kazoo Dude here in Green Hall gets the refrag. And now it's a 2v4 in the favor of BLC. Chicago gets that pick. However, there is still one kitchen. They're going to have to be careful. Ooh, they may hear that audio. Chicago and Showtime both getting picks. Now it's a 1v2. However, both of them are very low. EMP isn't even planted, actually. 1v1, EMP on the wall. He's forced to push B site. And Cream Baby there in the corner is able to get Showtime, who tried baiting the EMP, but it just didn't work out. For a while there, I thought the EMP was actually planted. Just before that 2K coming out from Showtime and Chicago, I thought Showtime had stuck the EMP before, but I was wrong. Very good plays there from BLC. I don't exactly agree with the double roam, however, it did end up working out for them. One of the roam was able to. No, the roam wasn't actually able to get a pick. I'm not sure. I feel like one roam tends to be enough for any defense. However, some teams like to play more aggro, and that is personal preference, really. Green Baby is able to get the first pick, however, not without taking a little bit of damage. Kazoo has also taken damage. However, early player advantage is good, and when you have it, you tend to want to rotate off the angle you're holding that got the pick and just back into sight, because player advantage is very strong, especially on defense. However, Green Baby does swing out. He does get another player, however, he does go down. We're now seeing Bros taking space, however, Uzi is here, gets a pick, hopefully rotates off. Flicker gets a wallbang kill, and now Chicago is on his own. Very aggro defense right now. Chicago does get that first pick. Chicago gets the second. This is starting to look bad for BLC. They've lost 2 players playing very aggro. However, EMP is on the ground in here, though, I believe. Yes. Foam is on wall. He does have the opportunity to blow that when he needs. However, it would be smart to get EMP in all the utility he wants first. Looks like he may be opting to go for kills instead. PLC players holding each other's angles. However, he might slip under the radar. 1v1 now. Chicago might get a 4K clutch. But no. Kazoo dude backside is able to get the kill, denying the 4K. Going into the next round, round 10. BLC is defending the top floor. However, we may be seeing a A site push. You don't usually see this coming out. B site tends to be a little bit easier. However, BLC does seem to be rotating appropriately. However, Green Baby does go down early. Green Baby seems to be the more aggro defender. However, Uzi is able to get Chicago, effectively trading out that kill. Kazoo is going to sit on the vent. However, will wait Ooh, grenade takes out the vent, and they might not be ready for the swing on vent. Good trades there coming out. Flicker refract, but Uzi taking Drury out. Now he's close on this corner. They will still have to be careful for the player in vent, though. Spike Jr. is able to get that kill. Now it's a 2v2. Only one of them is on site. However, Kazoo is still in a very dangerous position. If they're not careful, they could be shot in the back while trying to plant. Taking space in sight, and Kazoo takes out the planter and the player in shower. That's a 2K coming out. Great plant denial. Very good round for BLC. That puts them at match point. Bros is going to have to pull 3 rounds in a row in order to win out this map. Very great plays coming out so far from both teams. However, BLC does seem to be doing a little bit better on defense. In the beginning, we were seeing Bros running away with the rounds when they were on defense. However, second quarter, we were seeing BLC getting a lot more picks. Bottom floor, and we're seeing another slightly unorthodox push coming here from Bros, opting for the A-site push. You don't tend to see this coming out quite as often. I believe mostly because there's only really 2 places to enter site unless you want to take a lot of space. Unfortunate friendly frag taking a lot of damage on the Bros side, but ooh, bad instant coming out. However, another one does take a lot of damage on Flicker. Foam will be getting on wall, and they do have to be careful for this player in vent. Bros is gonna have to be careful. Some of their players are very low. Instant goes out. That's going to take a lot of damage. Chicago does get a pick, however, takes a lot of damage in the process. Ooh, all of these players are so low. However, Kazoo on the roam could be a huge problem. Hopefully they can have that flank watch. Ooh. David goes down. Drury gets one. Refrag. Spike Jr. takes out. Ooh. Wow. A lot of trading there. Did I see that correctly? When did Kazoo rotate back to side? I'm not sure, but a lot of trading coming out there. And while the EMP player was swinging in, they also had the other player swinging wall. Very good coordination there. That helped them to take a lot of space quickly, especially splitting up the attention of the BLC defense. That allowed them to get quite a few free kills, or mostly free kills, especially since the defense wasn't paying full attention. However, very good round for both teams. BLC was able to deny a lot of time. Mike, you are right. If the strat works, it works. We are seeing Bros push A site. They did favor this site last time they pushed on this floor. So, we'll see how this goes. They are also one round away from bringing it to match point. I do believe Flicker will hear this drone, and they do take a little bit more forward position. Nade goes out, doesn't catch any damage. He does rotate through the vent. Very good lean peek here. Very strong position, especially since most flashes and nades won't take him out. Flicker does get jury on that angle. There is also one swinging out from red barrels. There is another player in red barrels, and Showtime is able to get Cream Baby, but not before having one of his teammates taken out. Ensign there gets him in the corner, and Flicker is able to swing. Now it's player advantage for BLC. This is looking very good. They just need to not overextend too much. EMP player is on hatch. However, he's on his own right now. David is still here in hallway. David is able to pick up utility and weapons off the ground. This should help them in trying to take space on a site. A drop from hatch, however, two players back site take him out. Now it's a 1v2. EMP is in sight, and David has to push up. Doesn't have foam. He's going to have to run. Ooh, swings out, however, doesn't quite get the player on table and is also swung here from Bond. Unfortunate series of events, but not much that can be done in such a tight situation. Very close. Bros was almost able to push it to OT. Final scores for those who are interested. Kazoo and Modsy doing very good, both double digits, along with David and Spike Jr. 11-11, 12-10, 14-8, and 10-6. Everyone else staying relatively close behind. Everyone being 5 and above kills, not bad. Looks like we do have our second map chosen, and we're heading into Factory. Factory is one of my preferred maps, just behind Hideout. I think it is a very good blend of long and close quarters, especially with the mix of the assembly and here in lockers, along with here in vending. Very good blend of close and long quarters engagements. It really allows you to choose between several guns like Vezin Marui or even Knuts and RCPs. Personally, I have gotten my fair share of clips using Knut here in lockers. My personal favorite spot, however, hasn't been working quite as much for me recently, so. We are starting on top floor. BLC is defense. Looks like we will be seeing a hatch and locker side attack. Not sure if they're going to go B site or towards A. Does look like it may be towards A, especially since they have a player here, 3 players, 4 now on vending. Mike, I'm having fun reading your messages because you are stating things, but there's a 4-minute delay, so I can see things in the future a little, and your message of killing the player in red is very ironic to me, especially since I've already seen that. However, there is the player in lockers. They will have to be careful. However, they have taken a little bit of space here in vending. They have gotten wall blown. However, Kazoo here in lockers, being the pain in the side. However, he does rotate back. There are 2 players on B though. EMP player is now in hall. One has rotated into Cubby back there. There is still someone on B door. It's going to make it hard to push in with EMP. Chicago takes out Cream Baby, who tried to swing out. Ever wary of these roams. However, they don't know that both are on site. EMP is getting planted. Mozzie is getting one. Uzi gets the planter. Now it's a 1v2. They know the last player is in vending. Hopefully, at least. Chicago should know where one player is. However, they might be unsure of the second, and Mozzie is able to get that pick. Good round in the beginning. They were able to get pretty good control of vending and lockers. However, Kazoo getting those picks, and after Chicago wasn't able to cover the planter fully from swings from sight, kind of fell apart there. Now we're on to middle floor. BLC having a very good economy, seeing a lot of utility and weapons coming out. Maybe Bros is able to win because they are investing a little bit more. We only see 2 SMGs on the BLC side, and Bros has 4. Looks like we may be seeing an War Room hatch push, possibly. Either that or they're just clearing out here. Either way, I'm interested to see. War Room tends to be a less common push, however, I do see a lot of potential in it. Does look like it will be War Room, likely going for a plant here. They have to be careful for the player on bomb and con. There is also a player roaming downstairs. Unusual to see one roaming in assembly, however, it could work. 2 players here in B could be troublesome. Flicker on the door goes down very early to Dreary, however, not before taking damage. Uzi swings out, taken out by Showtime. Player advantage. However, Dreary is low. Foam is on wall. They can get it blown soon and get EMP. One is bomb. They're going to have to be careful. Spike Jr. takes out the one on bomb. This is not looking good here for BLC. Instant on con. Now it's a 2v5. They are on the roam though. One is also outside A site. Dreary is able to get that pick, and David is holding the crossfire. Flawless round, but Mozzie does get Showtime. A little bit of extra money into their pockets, however. That's a really dominant round. We saw BLC getting really aggro there in War Room. Not great, especially since they were giving ones and a lot of guns and utility. Dreary was able to get a Viper and an Ensign off of those bodies, and then I believe also was able to get a Omen from one of his teammates. Not something you want to be giving away for free. Granted, Drury did take a lot of damage. However, it didn't matter in the long run. They got a flawless. Perhaps see a little bit more uh not gonna lie, Mike, I have never heard of this Prophet Purdue thing. I might have to adopt that name. We do see Kazoo roaming upstairs. This is a personal favorite spot. You don't usually see that. However, it's an assembly side push. Very slow. Most of them are crouch walking. However, interestingly enough, Chicago is still upstairs in an office. He is swinging out now. However, there is a player upstairs in museum. They have to be careful. There is a static on this wall. Might make it a little bit difficult for them to swing in, especially if they have several players here. Kazoo is able to get Chicago up on top and rotates back to site. Very good use of his life. Uzi swings out, gets Drury. Anson also stops this push in its tracks. Kazoo is going to be swinging up. He could get a pick. Uzi swings out, gets Showtime. 5v2 could be a flawless in return. Kazoo gets one's feet under the tank, and Cream Baby gets the last pick. A flawless victory for BLC in return. Great prediction, Mike. Very good prediction. Utility, as Mike said, is the name of the game right now. You don't tend to see teams going in with little to no util, and this shows it. Uh-oh. What? Not maintaining enough. Oh, I'm looking at the wrong round. Sorry, Mike. I'm sorry, I do not know what's going on right now. It's only the stream having issues.
Apologies for the break in casting. I was having problems, but it just reset itself. My connection just fixed itself and my dropped frames reset. So I'm fine now? I'm not sure. I missed a few rounds, though. 3-2 BLC in the lead, halftime round. Okay, back to this though. We do see someone here in the corner. I do tend to see that a tiny bit. However, it could get you killed like that. Forced to swing out, however, is refragged through the wall. Instant goes out. Ooh, a lot of trades coming out. Very aggro on this doorway. And Cream Baby is able to get that pick. Wow, very quick round there. Bros took a lot of space quickly, however, the crossfire from the wall and doorway was able to get a lot of picks very early. Alright, well, things seem to be good on my side, so hopefully no more stream issues. We are now on top floor though. Sides have swapped. And we see Hatch getting blown very early. Ooh, wow. Very quick pushes coming out here from BLC so far, taking advantage of that drone. Very useful. We'll have to be careful for Spike Jr. in this corner. There is also downstairs roam, however, that may take a moment to actually affect them. Danny, a new player coming in for BLC, is able to get a pick. Kazoo, though, on the other side, is able to get a few. However, he is in sight. Modsy gets the pick. EMP is getting planted, and Chicago is the last one alive on Bro's defense. However, they seem to anticipate this roam, and Team Ace coming out from BLC there. Very dominant round. Kazoo did a very good job there of distracting on B, while Modsy swung into sight and got EMP down for basically free. Very good coordination, and that ending flank watch kind of sealed the deal there for Bros. Might be very difficult for them to take back the lead that they had in the first part of the first half of first map. We do see a Huracan coming out from Flicker, interestingly enough. Don't usually see that chosen. I'd like to see what they do with that. I don't prefer the Huracan, however, I do know a lot of people that do. I am more a Canuck player, though. Looks like Flicker will be going in bottom floor. No one is on a downstairs roam, though. We are kitchen site again. Well, first time of this half, but they are on hatch. No one is upstairs, though. Unusual to not see a roam like that. Grenade does go out to Khan. Does take out Chicago. Very good early pick. Kazoo also gets one here in assembly. Danny gets Dreary. And Bros has one more player once again, and this time they're 4 HP.
Ooh. And the Hurricane. BLC is starting to run away with these rounds, as seen by Queen Baby TKing. Very good there. They were able to take a lot of space thanks to Gazoo dropping that War Room hatch. That allowed them to get, was it 2 players there? On B, no, it was 1 player on B site. And that allowed them to, whoa. I'm sorry, I'm getting a new error. I haven't seen. I may be facing another situation with the stream. I'm not sure what's going on. I think I will restart this stream after this map. For now, we are into what could be the last round of this map. Drone going in, however, it's a very divided push here. 2 aren't even on the same floor, and Rose is holding very close to sight. Spike is in a very odd position. Perhaps it'll work out for them. They are flashed. However, the offense isn't swinging out far enough for Spike to see them. Does get that pick. Wall isn't blown though. One was in sight. However, they go down. Danny on the door is able to get one once Khan though. Chicago gets that pick. Rotates out to assembly. There is one in A though. Player incon is very low. Rodsley's going to need to be careful. Kazoo is also here. Ooh, Instant goes out. Won't quite. No, it will catch Chicago in the corner. Now Showtime is in a 1v2. And BLC win that map. Final scores for those who are interested. The Hurricane is a little bit crazy, especially getting kills with it. We do see pros players disconnecting. Perhaps they're subbing players in, or no, it may be the end of the scrim. Apologies if there are issues with the video. I'm not sure what's happening on my side. Hopefully it doesn't happen again, but it does look like that will be the end of the scrim. Oh, I didn't even put the final score in OBS, but BLC won 14-7. Very good plays from both teams, however, BLC was able to come out on top. Thank you for tuning in if you did. Hopefully I don't encounter this issue anymore with the stream quality, and come watch the next one. I'm not sure when it's going to happen. It has slowed down a little bit and school is coming up, so I might not be able to cast as much, but